Nivellen is one of the best examples of what curses can do to a man in The Witcher. But how did he get cursed? And how did he and Geralt meet? Well, it all started with a hungry roach. When a Witcher is out on the path, there are many things that they may stumble upon. Geralt knows this all too well, as when he once rode through Redania near Nivellen, he noticed a flock of birds circling above the trees a little way off the path. Geralt decided to investigate what had happened and try and see if there was anyone that needed his services. As he at this time was low on gold, he also needed to get some more to be able to pay for roach or oats. The birds circling in the air can often be a sign of someone who is injured or dead, and so was the case here. A woman and a man lay dead on the forest floor. Chunks of meat were taken off their corpses by wolves and birds alike. The man had several items on him, indicating that he hadn't been in the woods for long before he died. These wounds and the fact that there still had valuables on him indicated that it was no bandit who had done this, but rather a monster. Geralt found it strange that they would not travel by road, but instead through the forest. And so he decided to try and figure out why they did that. He searched around the area to try and figure out what happened. Geralt came upon an abandoned looking manor. As he approached the building, he noticed a woman standing on a hill in the distance, watching him. As he tried to walk to her, she quickly ran away, not seeming to have problems running in a long white dress. As the woman had vanished, Geralt turned his attention back at the manor. The Witcher was about to touch the gate, but before he could do anything, it swung right open, with no one standing on the other side. Geralt entered the garden. Everything was overgrown, and only a rose bush seemed attended to. He approached the roses. They were a special color that you would not see normally. Indigo, with slight purple on the edges. As he touched the flower, suddenly the door and all the shutters of the mansion flew open. Along the path, coming from the front door, a monster came charging at him. In a blink of an eye, Geralt pulled out a sword from his back and pointed it straight at the charging beast. The beast was humanoid in shape, dressed in tattered yet stylish clothing. His human likeness, however, ended right above his collar. For above it loomed a gigantic, hairy, bear-like head with enormous ears, a pair of wild eyes and terrifying jaws full of crooked fangs, in which a red tongue flickered like a flame. "Flee, mortal man," the monster roared, flapping his paws but not moving from the spot. "I'll devour you, tear you to pieces. Are you deaf? Away with you. Clear off while still in one piece. Because if you don't, then..." "Then what?" interrupted Geralt. No matter how scary and threatening the beast tried to be, Geralt wasn't afraid. The monster was surprised by this, and how calm Geralt remained. Once he realized that Geralt wasn't there out to harm him, he invited him inside, where they had a talk together, and sat at the table and dined. Geralt accepted this hospitality, and followed him inside. As he sat down at the table, the monster summoned the food for both him and Geralt. "I forgot," snorted the monster, "that you're not timid. What shall I call you?" "Geralt." "And your name, dear host?" "Nivellen, but they call me Degen, or Vanger, around here. And they use me to frighten children." Nivellen was cursed 12 years before he and Geralt met. Before his curse, he was a weak and spotty young man. His father and his father before him were bandit leaders. Over time, they had accumulated a lot of wealth, allowing the family to live in luxury. However, as is often the case, this didn't last. His grandfather became incapable to do almost anything after he was hit on the head by a morning star, and his father was one day brought back in 2 pieces. Therefore, the men wanted Nivellen to take his place, to lead them. Yet it was more like they led him. They started doing crimes that his father would never have approved of. And one day, he and his men robbed a temple in Galabol. The men wanted Nivellen to become a man, and therefore they forced him to rape a priestess that was present at the temple. She cursed him. She said he was a monster in human skin and would become a monster in a monster skin. Nivellen could only remember that she had said something about love and blood before she took a small dagger hidden in her hair and killed herself. Nivellen and his men quickly fled, as it was a bad temple which felt cursed to them, for it was the temple of Coram Achtera, the lion-headed spider. It took a few days before the curse started working. Once Nivellen's servants saw him, they screamed and ran away. Nivellen was shocked and looked at himself in the mirror. He saw how monstrous he looked. He became enraged, and he was way stronger than he expected. Not only that, but the house was under his control. Everyone that didn't make it out in time was killed by the flying furniture. Nivellen was terrified of what he had done and feared that the men from the nearby village would come and kill him. But nobody came, and Nivellen hid away in the house, scaring off guests that came close by having the shutters open and close and roaring through a gargoyle. Yet one morning he was surprised to see that someone had made his way into his garden. The man had plucked one of the blue roses that had belonged to Nivellen's aunt, brought over to the mansion by his grandfather, who had taken the seeds from Nazir. Nivellen thought about how he was taught as a young boy, about fairy tales where princes were cured of their curse by a woman's kiss. He thought it was worth a try, and stormed out at the merchant, yelling the first thing that came to his mind. "Your daughter or your life!" The man started crying and told him that his daughter was only 8 years old. Nivellen felt sorry for him and invited him into the house. Once the man left, he gave him some gold, as Nivellen had no use for it, and he felt sorry for what he had done to this man. It was 2 weeks later when it started. Another merchant who had heard about the gold reward stood in the garden with his daughter, who was on the bigger side. Nivellen gave him gold, and in exchange, the daughter stayed with him for a year. The girl was afraid of Nivellen and hid from him for almost a month before she started to become less scared. Nivellen tried talking to her, but he was never good at talking to women, even in this beastly form. Even though Nivellen enjoyed the company, he was glad once the merchant came to pick up his daughter once more. For a few months after that, he locked himself in his house, scaring off anyone who came with their daughter, before he realized that he missed the company. And so he accepted the next one that came by. The next one was very different from the first one. Fen was a small, bright and chirpy, and most surprisingly of all, not afraid of him. They even, after they got drunk one night, went to presumably bed together or kissed, it's not quite clear. Nivellen had hoped that he would be a normal man once again, but it was all in vain, as he was still a monster on the outside. But that didn't stop him from having some more fun. Fen came up with the idea of a new way to scare off any unwanted guests. She would be on his back, without clothes, blowing an old hunting horn, while Nivellen would charge on all fours towards the intruders. Even though they had a lot of fun together, eventually she left. Nivellen took in 3 more girls over the years. And the longer he was looking like a beast, the more he started to kind of like it. He wasn't getting ill or coughing all the time. He was healthy, yet he looked like a beast. Over the years, Nivellen discovered that animals had taken a liking for him, that they weren't afraid. And so was Verena, a woman who had never left him after the year period. It took a few attempts before Geralt could get Nivellen to reveal the truth about how the woman Geralt had seen fleeing from him in the woods was in love with Nivellen, and Nivellen with her. Geralt warned Nivellen that she was most likely a type of monster called the Rusalka. Yet Nivellen told him he expected something like that, but he didn't care because he loved her. As Geralt was leaving, he told Nivellen why he had come, about the man and his daughter he found in the woods. Nivellen told that they had visited 3 days ago, and that he shut the entire house so that they would leave. Geralt made his way out of the mansion back to the forest. He started thinking. Geralt couldn't make his way to the main road before nightfall, so he stayed on a hill for the night. In the distance he saw a fire burning, which was suddenly accompanied by singing and a woman's tortured screaming. Once day came, Geralt made his way to the fire, where he found nothing but bones and ash. The thought of what Nivellen said kept creeping in his mind, until Geralt decided to go back to the mansion. Once he arrived, he could hear a woman singing in a language he did not know. With his silver sword drawn, he walked through the garden, locking eyes with the woman, who was holding on to the back of a dolphin above the fountain. Geralt questioned her about what she was. Geralt expected her to be a vampire, a higher one, due to her being able to be out in sunlight at daytime. Once he came to the realization that she was a Bruxa, Geralt could only manage to save himself just in time from her screeching blast of sound with the help of the heliotrope spell. The woman had turned into a giant bat and charged at the Witcher. After some fighting, Nivellen came out of the house. He tried to stop the fighting, yet it was to no avail. The Bruxa screamed at Nivellen, leading to him flying back into some scaffolding that came down upon him. The Bruxa followed this by once more screaming at Geralt, who wasn't able to react in time, leading to him being blasted against the wall. Out of nowhere, Nivellen yelled the vampire's name. Verena. He shoved a 3-meter long wooden pole right through her chest. Yet the vampire was still alive, clawing her way towards Nivellen, while saying, "Mine or nobody's. I love you. Love you." As she got close to Nivellen, she grabbed his hat and prepared to go for his throat to kill him. Geralt leaped towards the vampire and in one precise cut sent her head flying. On the ground lay Nivellen, curled up, sheltering his head in his arms, shaking with twitches and shivers. "Get up," said the Witcher. The young, handsome, well-built man with a pale complexion lying by the wall raised his head and looked around. His eyes were vague. He rubbed them with his knuckles. He noticed that something was different. He was no longer a monster. He was once more a man. Nivellen was surprised and he couldn't stop feeling his face. He wanted to know how he had been cured of this curse, to which Geralt answered, "There is a grain of truth in every fairy tale. Love and blood both possess a mighty power." For this to have cured Nivellen must have meant it was pure love. Nivellen's story is based on the Beauty and the Beast story, as you might have noticed. I've made a video on Nivellen in the past, but I felt as though the video was not complete and lacking information and kind of lower quality than my current standard. On a side note, they have cast an actor for Nivellen. It's the same actor who played Tormund's Giantsbane in Game of Thrones. Christopher Youth or something, I'm not quite sure about his name. Sorry if I butchered the name, sorry. That was it for this video. Till the next one. Bye.